Rockets. But there's some things to remember, some things we got to talk about with this Utah Jazz team. Is this all for the good of the Jazz? Actually, yes. Let's talk about it. It's the Hoops Nerd Show. All right, guys, before we get into this, let's just give a shout out to our sponsor, Prize Picks. Use promo code HoopsNerd right now, and they will match up to $100. Right now, the Utah Jazz are resting multiple players each night. You can basically play this pretty well. If you look at who's playing, who's not playing, you can predict what's going to happen with this Jazz team. Go to prizepicks.com, use promo code HoopsNerd. All you Utah Jazz Hoops nerds out there have a chance to really dominate on this. And if you just go on the over for who's playing against the Jazz right now, you're going to succeed. So go to prizepicks.com, use promo code HoopsNerd. The averages are in your favor right now. It's the time to take advantage, guys, so go do it. It supports the channel too, and it's a lot of fun. All right, let's see. Let's take that off. The Utah Jazz get crushed by the Houston Rockets tonight. The Houston Rockets could not miss, and that was, I mean, not literally true, but pretty darn close to the story of this game. Let's turn this down and let's make me small. The Utah Jazz, yeah, they're not that interested in winning games, and they've basically solidified the 9 seed now. If they just continue on this track that they're on, they are going to get at least the 9 seed, unless 2 teams jump them in the lottery, which would be just honestly, it would be the most hilarious thing ever for Utah to lose like this and to have 2 teams jump them that late would be crazy. But honestly, Jalen Green just he was, oh, thank heaven, 7 for 11 from 3 tonight. And then Fred VanVleet, 10 for 15. This was the game right here. It was just craziness. And at no point could the Jazz ever really slow them down. That really was the game. There's not much more analysis out there. I mean, Amen Thompson was someone I loved in this draft, and I think he has a chance to be incredible. And one thing to learn from this is, Jalen Green is, what is he, in his 3rd season now? And it's like a third of the way. There's only a third left, and he's been just absolutely lights out recently. Probably a good sign that you should you should give these guys a chance to develop, right? You need to give these guys a chance to get better, and that's what they're doing. And so Amen Thompson, you just got to give him time. There is no way you can just say this is what he is now. One thing we do know about Thompson is he can defend at a high level, for sure. Jabari Smith, he still needs some time. I mean, he got in a fist fight with Chris Dunn at the beginning of the game, but he's a player. In fact, I'm just curious about Jabari Smith. Besides the fact that he kind of gets into it with a Jazz player every time they play now. But let's see. It's year 2. He's shooting 35% from 3. He's already gone up 5%. So you can just see a trajectory there. If you're a Rockets fan, you're hoping that he just can he go up 5% more next season? Maybe. Why not? We know he can shoot the ball. But anyways, this Rockets team has bottomed out the last 3 years since James Harden. And then they're now on a nice trajectory. And it's kind of the same story. This is what we're seeing with the Utah Jazz. The Jazz are at the very beginning of this still. Anyone who thinks that this rebuild was just going to be last offseason, I have some bad news for you. These things take a few years. They just do. And you have to find those guys. And then, if you're like the Houston Rockets, they got Jabari Smith, top 3 pick. I can't remember exactly. I thought Jalen Green was number 2 overall. I can't remember. Yeah, let's see. 6'4", age 225, draft pick number 2. So they got the number 2 overall pick. They got the number 3 overall pick. And then they decided to build around it. They got Amen Thompson. I can't remember what they were last year in the standings. They were like the second or third. They were like the second worst team last year. And I think that Detroit was worse. And they got like Amen Thompson at like 4. So they go 2, 3, 4 with their picks. And then this offseason, they said, you know what? We're now going to build around those guys. and we're going to bring in vets. They bring in Dylan Brooks, who I don't really love, but he does bring at least some veteran presence. And then they bring in Fred VanVleet. They are going to get another pick in this draft. And really, we should start learning from some of these teams like Houston. Houston is getting this Brooklyn pick. By the way, is there any more team out there? As much as you're mad at the Jazz right now, they're trying to lose these games. That's what they're trying to do. And they're succeeding at what they're trying to do. Brooklyn is giving their pick to Houston. This Houston pick, they get unprotected. So there's not any sort of protection on this for Brooklyn. Brooklyn just sucks. Imagine being that pathetic. They have no real hope. All their hopes and dreams are on Mikal Bridges. And that's something that Jazz fans should remember right now, is the Jazz control their destiny. Brooklyn does not, and they are losing. There is no worse situation right now than Brooklyn. In fact, I'm kind of curious because honestly, the Jazz are just trying to lose. Nets, future draft picks. It's pretty bad for Brooklyn, guys. 2025, they don't have their, let's see, they get the Phoenix pick in 2025. They have their own second round pick in 2020. Oh my gosh. They have their own pick in 2028. Oh my gosh. Houston's got to be ecstatic. Oh my gosh. And this is the chance that Utah runs into with Cleveland and Minnesota, because you have no idea what's going to happen down the road. But look at this. 2020. Oh my gosh, that's terrible. I mean, they do get Phoenix's pick, but Phoenix is going to be pretty good, but Phoenix might be bad. This is wild. The only first they have are from Philadelphia and Phoenix, who are going to be pretty good. I mean, you could argue Minnesota and Cleveland are going to be pretty good, but that's 2027. No way. So they get Phoenix's pick in 2025, but Phoenix is going to be running Devin Booker and Kevin Durant and all these guys. And if those go bad, they're going to try to trade for other players. Oh my gosh. So anyways, here's the difference between Utah and Brooklyn. If you're sad about the Jazz right now, it's okay. It's okay to be sad. I'm going to move this over a little bit. It's okay. The Jazz are bad right now, but that's what they're trying to do. Brooklyn can't be good because they just can't. They're bad. They have no hope at all. Utah has a plan, like they're trying to be bad. They're not, whether you agree with it or not, this is the plan they're going on, and they're succeeding at it, at least at this point. And I think this plan is a continuation of what's going to happen the next few years. By the way, we talked about it was it last show? Maybe a little bit. I ranted a lot last show. I apologize. Utah is on a trajectory right now that they need to go on. Like, let's talk about these two teams, Houston and Brooklyn. Houston has gotten the 2, 3, and 4. They controlled their own destiny, and they used it pretty well. Jalen Green, if he plays for the rest of his career, even close to what he's doing right now, these last 7 or 8 games, the Houston Rockets have the best record in the NBA the last 10 games. Look at this. They are 9-1 in their last 10. That's tied with Boston. And I think they're 10-1 actually. So they're actually the hottest team in the NBA right now. So I guess if that helps your feelings a little bit, maybe. But Brooklyn is one of the most pathetic teams in the NBA. It's kind of crazy, their team history. The 2 times they've done this, they just fail. And Houston is only going to benefit. But anyways, they get Brooklyn's pick. Brooklyn can't win even though they're trying. Like what is Brooklyn even doing? And so if you're sad about this, well, don't. Because the Jazz are on a trajectory that will probably likely lead them around a path that someone like Houston and OKC have done. Because what has Houston and OKC done? They have filled their team with top tier talent that if you develop them, they can turn into really nice players. So far, the Jazz have actually done a great job with their picks, even though they haven't been in the top 5 yet. And I have a hard time not seeing them go for that top 5 this offseason. That's at least where I see this going if you want to be on a nice trajectory like this, because guess what? Houston is now going to be good 4 years. They don't even have Şengün right now, and I don't know if Şengün is holding them back or what. But this team has a lot of nice young pieces now, and they've stabilized things with these veterans. And that's kind of like what Utah did when they traded Olynyk and I can't remember the Italian stallion they sent to Detroit. Why can't I remember his name? Fontecchio and Ochai Agbaji even. When you trade those players and you go full rookie development, you'll see flashes and you'll have games where Keontae's shown us that he's going to be great. He really has, but he's in a slump right now. That's what rookies do. What veterans do, they don't necessarily help you always win games. They kind of raise your floor because what do? They stabilize the ship. When it's rookies, you get frustrated. You don't have experience overcoming these obstacles, and you don't always know what to do. Like Sensabaugh right now is, rightfully struggling. Taylor Hendricks, I saw him try a few things. It didn't work out, and that's okay. But there's no stabilization net right now, and that's why the Jazz are losing. And if the Jazz want a top 5 pick in next year's draft, which is an exceptional draft, an exceptional one, they're probably going to need to go lots of rookies. And there was a lot of people on Twitter, and by the way, I've kept them in the petty folder. They will be reminded of things next year that said the Jazz couldn't be bad enough with Markkanen to get a top 5 pick. Well, look at this. Utah right now is 2-8 in their last 10. Tankathon gives them a green rating. They right now are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are bottom 5 since trade deadline in the last 10. The only team worse is in the last 10 is Toronto. But Utah actually is worse since trade deadline than Toronto. The only team worse than Utah since trade deadline is Washington, who, by the way, have won 2 in a row. Look at that. Oh, no! Our second round pick just got worse. Crud, I've got to do a tank watch update. Crud, I gave myself work. Thanks a lot, Washington. You gave me work to do. But anyways, Utah controls that's the thing. Utah is in prime position now over the next 2 seasons to add elite talent. It's what they need to do. And it's going to be painful for all the, the casual fans out there who kind of just tune into the Jazz. And, I put a tweet out there where, like, there's some Jazz fans, and if you want to think like this, that's fine. I think it's a bad way to think that Utah can never win a title, or the NBA is biased against Utah. Oh, the NBA will never let Utah win a number 1 pick. And honestly, it's baloney. Now, do the NBA have bad referees and officiating? Yes, it's really bad, and sometimes it's extremely questionable, some of the things they do. If you want to argue there's some shenanigans with referees here and there, I would tend to agree. But if you go listen to the Whistleblower podcast about Tim Donaghy, I personally believe there's guys in the NBA that were in on it with Tim Donaghy. But it's really hard to be that bad. And it's why I'm pro replay. Because even though sometimes it slows down the game, and I wish people like Bill Simmons and everyone who talks about replay and hating it, and Ryan Russillo, I wish they'd shut up about it. Because guess what? Have you ever had a championship game taken away from you by questionable officials who were officiating at the time of Tim Donaghy? Well, Utah Jazz fans have. I have. And you know what? Let's get American here a little bit. And all my foreign fans, you guys, I don't want to exclude you. So here's what I think. You have to have some sort of constitution to whatever entity you run, and some sort of checks and balances to that organization. And what the replay does with these referees, and this is the wildest of tangents, but you need checks and balances. And guess what? The replay provides checks and balances so that if you have some sort of corrupt official that's deciding that he's going to break the constitution of the NBA or whatever, that you have a checks and balance there that says, no, we're going to replay that. That was ridiculous. Because you wouldn't know, it would have been nice for the Utah Jazz when they called that 3 for, I forgot his name, the backup point guard for the Jazz who took the 3. It was clearly out of his hand. It was so obvious. They call it off. And the Jazz could have challenged it, and they would have got the 3. Right? And I'm probably remembering it wrong. I can't even remember. But if the Jazz had that, those finals are different for Utah. And there were referees, Dick Bavetta at that time, that refereeing at the same time Tim Donaghy, that I'm sorry, there was some questionable things here and there. Go ask the Sacramento Kings against the Lakers. Go ask them. Uh, Questionable. Go ask Rasheed Wallace. By the way, if you haven't listened to the Whistleblower, there's like episode 2 is incredibly inappropriate randomly. It's weird to I think to kind of smear the character a little bit of some of these officials, which I'm okay with, but it's be forewarned. It's a great podcast, but episode 2 or something like that gets real weird. But it is good. And Rasheed Wallace is in that. Tim Donaghy is in that. It's pretty crazy stuff. But anyways, that has forced the NBA to do, and these are things I have heard, and by the way, having been yelled at by freaking Monty McCutcheon myself, I think those things help cure some of those things. Higher salaries for these guys. They used to be lower. They hired them so that they're not tempted to have to do some of this money stuff. I don't think there's anything out there that is, long story short, and this is a ramble because I guess that's what happens when your team's tanking and you just go in a million directions. And this is live, so it is what it is. But long story short, all the conspiracy theories you can throw at me, I don't believe it. They can be debunked. This idea that the referees are cheating, if they are, it's on the margins at best. At best. And that's why I'm pro replay. They should never, ever take away replay, because if you've ever lost a game because of a bad call like that, a close one where Michael Jordan hits a game winner with 5 seconds left, you don't think 3 points mattered? It mattered a lot. So that's why I'm pro that. And it's why, it curtails that conspiracy theory, in my opinion. The checks and balances. I don't know why I went Constitution there, but, in this country we have checks and balances. And in other countries with constitutions and different democracies, they also have checks and balances similar to what the U.S. has. And it helps. It helps if you have a corrupt referee, if you have some sort of different governing body that keeps that corrupt official from doing it. And to be frank, it's why the NBA has done some of these things, to help some of that. So even if there is some sort of corrupt referee, like Tim Donaghy, having replay curtails some of that stuff. It does. And they've actually made it more than less. And it's important that they do. In fact, I should do a video about that, to be honest. I should probably write that down and explain why replay is actually incredibly important for the game. And the other thing, this idea that the Jazz can win a title. It's more possible now than it's ever been because there is more transparency, there is more scrutiny, and the replay is there for them to do it. The other thing, this idea that the NBA will never give the number 1 pick, guys, that's not true. It's not true. If you know how the lottery works and the lottery balls, it's impossible to cheat it. And they invite guys in there every year. I honestly, if you want to go look, I do understand the lottery now pretty well. Last year I was like, I'm going to understand this. I'm going to look it up. And guess what? It's not corrupt. There's no frozen envelope. It's done by ping pong balls. And the way, go look it up. I don't have time to explain it now, but it is done by ping pong balls. They invite writers in every single season. They invite people in to watch. Respected members of the press, people like Zach Lowe have been in there. And it's very possible for Utah to win the lottery. 100%. This idea that they won't let the Jazz win the number 1 pick is not true. That's just not true. If you think like that, you're wasting your time in kind of a loser's mindset. You don't want to be there. The Jazz can win the number 1 pick. The Jazz can win the title. Those are two things that are absolutely true. And we need to share this with our friends and family who don't believe it. Okay? The Jazz can win a championship. The Jazz can win the lottery. But you really can't do those two things if you are not doing a certain set of specific things you need to do. And one of those things is get multiple elite talents on your team that you can build around And then once you have those elite talents, and there's three ways you can do it: free agency, draft, and trade. The Jazz are not getting an elite talent through free agency. So there's certain teams that they can use that as their main way of getting stars, and there's only a handful, at most a handful, probably like two or three. Los Angeles Lakers, we know that the titles they've won, they brought over Shaq. They brought over LeBron in free agency. That's their advantage. There's no question that the Lakers are on easy mode, and how they don't win it every year anyway is pretty wild. But they're pretty cheap. Jeannie Buss does a bad job, actually. She does not manage that team in a way that is looking to do things in a cutting edge way. It's more just they're on easy street, and they still manage to win once in a while. They won their nice little summer camp title 2 or 3 years ago. Congrats to them. They were the winners of summer camp awards. Congrats to LeBron and them. They won the hotel championship. But they don't manage their team very well. Even on easy mode, they still lose. It's like when you hand your dad the controller to play a game with him, and then you're like, oh yeah, he doesn't like video games. So anyways, the Jazz can't do it. Miami can kind of do that. We saw Brooklyn get Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, and they still didn't win a title. But that's not an avenue the Jazz are going to get a top-tier guy. You have to do it either through draft or trade. And trade's harder than you think. In fact, this is really, when we're talking top-tier talent, you got to draft them. And Houston, who has probably more likelihood to get free agents than Utah, has still had to go through the draft to do this. They've still had to draft their guys, their top guys through the draft. Jalen Green, they drafted him. Amen Thompson, draft. Şengün, if you're a Şengün fan, draft. Jabari Smith, draft. They drafted these guys. They are now building on them. And then what, this is kind of the model. OKC got really lucky because they got SGA through trade, but everyone else for the Oklahoma City Thunder, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, all those different guys, Cason Wallace, all those guys are through draft. And then once you have those guys, then you can start making trades. Like Oklahoma City went out and got Gordon Hayward for their bench. It's pretty, just watching them recently, that's an awesome move. But Utah's not there yet. These trades where you get these kind of fill in the holes type players, you need to not rush the process, all right? They talked about the process tonight a little bit. Utah is still working to get those top-tier talents. We've got a nice guy in Keontae George, and, he might develop into that number one guy, and maybe he becomes that guy. There's some development that has to happen there, though. Taylor Hendricks, at worst, he's going to be a elite-level defender, and he's going to be a good shooter, and maybe he can develop beyond that. Utah still needs 2 or 3 guys in the draft over the next few seasons. They just do. At least next year. Okay? At least. Because Lauri Markkanen is not that number one guy. He is a second or third option type player. He is, even when the Jazz were playing at their best, when they were like 19-7 at that one point in the season, it fell apart pre-trade deadline. And I think some players maybe knew they were going to move and things like that. But they also started the season 3-8. And that was with Lauri Markkanen, And so those are just some realities about this Jazz team. And yes, Taylor Hendricks and Keontae George are going to develop, but if you build this team just around those three, it probably is not going to be good enough to win a championship, or at least be a championship contender. You need at least 1 or 2 more guys, and then you figure it out with all these different players. How do they fit in the hierarchy? That's what Houston's figuring out this season right now. They're figuring out who's our number one guy. A lot of the season was Şengün. Well, this last 10 games, it's certainly looking like Jalen Green, who was a number 2 overall pick, is starting to look like a number 2 overall pick. He did tonight. Holy smokes. Utah's kind of in a similar situation as this Houston team. But Houston is ahead of the Jazz on that track. Utah is still at like 0.0, guys. They are still in the teardown process from being one of those top teams. Now, I wish it had gone a little bit quicker. I think all of us wished it was a little bit like they would have got a higher pick last year, but you know what? They did pretty darn good considering they weren't in the top 5. But now is the time to go get 2 top 5 picks, just like Houston did, right? Jabari Smith is still going to get better each season. Jalen Green is still extremely young. Did we pull him up? He is 22 years old. You know, he's still developing. And so, yeah, the Jazz are at like 0.0, probably 0.1 of a 10-point process. I'd say they're more like step 1, maybe step 2. And guess what? Next season is like, yeah, let's say they're step 1. Next season's step 2 to get to that title. But it's going to be painful. It is. It just is. All right. Can we talk about maybe more happy thoughts? It's hard on a night where the Jazz got absolutely obliterated. They just got destroyed. And you can tell. And there's only 11 games left. These players know what's going on. They understand. I think some of them are probably ready for the offseason, not just to kind of get right, but also to kind of work on their game. But I'd say right now, Keontae George has been in a slump, so it was nice to see him knock down 2 shots because he's honestly been struggling to knock down that 3. Taylor Hendricks, he had one move in this game, and I think it was a turnover. It was this one. In fact, let's just pull this up and look at it. I liked this. Yeah. Now, look, what's going on here is he's actually getting a play in the post. This is a mismatch against, I think that's Jalen Green.
It happens.
Yeah, look, and he gets it in the post, and he's backing him up. And I like this. And yes, that was a turnover. But these are the things these players need to do. Taylor Hendricks, that's great. I mean, that's just him learning. And he can now go look at film, and then we're going to try it again. And he's probably going to turn it over again. You know what? You need a lot of that all next season because these guys have to learn how to play so that when in 3 or 4 years, let's say you're just lucky enough to get Cooper flagged, like you win the lottery and prove all these Jazz masochists who just don't think anything will ever good happen to the Jazz, which I just completely disagree. Like if the Jazz win the number 1 overall pick and get an absolute blue chipper in like Cooper Flagg who can develop alongside these guys, you've got to let those guys play because you need to lose some games so that maybe you get lucky and get AJ DeBonsa next season. Could you imagine if the Jazz had a lineup of Keontae George, AJ DeBonsa, Cooper Flagg, Taylor Hendricks? I think my mouth just started watering. Are you serious? Guys, we got to think of something for AJ DeBonsa, by the way. DeBonsa, man. Oh my gosh. He is as tall as Cooper Flagg, and he is a baller. He is the number 1 overall pick in that draft. I got to look at Cam Boozer a little more in 2026. But DeBonsa is, woo boy, is he going to be good. By the way, I posted it on my Twitter at one point. Go watch Cooper Flagg versus AJ DeBonsa. It's the number 1 overall pick in 2025, not this draft, but the following in 2025, playing against AJ DeBonsa in 2026. And oh mama, you can see the thing about, and I guess on a loss like this, you've got to talk about what you're working for. And it's something like that. I think Cooper Flagg is a incredibly unique player. He's just he's a 5x5 threat every night is what he's going to be. Like he is going to be the career leader in the Utah Jazz in triple doubles after his rookie year. If the Jazz got him, he would because he is 6'9". He looks like 6'10" to me. He is incredibly athletic. He defends at an elite level. He can shoot the ball, and he's a very unselfish, willing passer. So that you can kind of run your offense through him, He's the perfect player to play next to like a Keontae George, to be honest. And a Taylor Hendricks too. That type of defense. It's going to be really interesting. But if the Jazz could be bad enough and get lucky enough to get him, but even if they don't, there's an Ace Bailey in that draft, and there's some other guys in that draft that are really interesting. uh, Malawatch. I mean, the Jazz have to be bad next year, but the good news is that they are pretty bad. And that's okay. You're supposed to be bad. This is what's supposed to happen. Dirty Jazz Car Wash channel, my friend. Thank you so much. Jazz tanking and going for lottery and picks. Yep. It's like we've talked about. They are doing what Houston did. They are doing what OKC did. And, I know Tony Jones has tweeted about this and talked about this, that they're going to use their cap space. I forgot his name on Twitter. Let me just pull it up. The Jazz have a lot of cap space next year. They're one of the top cap space. I think they're the number 3 team in terms of cap space next year. So let me just pull this link up. So this is Keith Smith, NBA. The Jazz are the number 3 in cap space next year, so they could re-sign Larry Markkinen, or they could renegotiate his contract. This is what's really interesting next year. This allows the Jazz to do a lot of different things. Obviously, they can just sign players. The biggest one is likely to be if they want to re-sign Larry Markkinen, and I don't think that's an absolute given. I think that's something they've really got to think about. He says right here, Jazz will likely use a bunch of space to renegotiate and extend Larry Markkinen. Yes, of course. So that's where this might go. But there's also a world where the Jazz decide they want even more picks, although they have so many that maybe they don't want to have that many young players. Although I tell you what, there's worse things than having a ton of bites at that apple and ton of opportunities to win that top 5 pick. I mean, I tell you what, if there's teams out there that want to give Jazz picks in like 2029, I think Utah would be more than happy to do that. Because you know what? I think it's worth it to be really bad next year and the following year, because they're not conveying the pick this year. That's out the window. And we talked about this. I've talked about it multiple times. Leaf Tulane talked about it multiple times. The Jazz, it's a tough situation for 2026 because the Jazz were not good enough this year to convey the pick, and that basically happened when they started 3-8. Really disappointing start. I mean, I think the Jazz probably expected a little more from THT and Colin Sexton as when they started the year. Colin Sexton didn't figure things out until after that 3-8 stretch, and it's tough because the West is tough. And the Jazz did go 19-7, but it wasn't good enough. So it kind of puts the Jazz in this other trajectory. And like we said, and Tulane talked about it, I've talked about it multiple times. I'll talk to someone else. I should talk to multiple. I'm going to bring on more people to do more podcasts, but you can't. The reason they traded those picks was to get those picks later in the season. But because they haven't conveyed this pick this year, I think it's very likely they're going to tank. And this is my hot take, and I know people, I have people in the comments saying, "Oh, the Hoops Nerd has bad takes," blah blah blah. Okay, well, let's see what happens, because Utah can't go into 2026 with a team that's losing like this and get nothing, right? Keontae George and Taylor Hendricks are going to be really solid by that time. At least give them another year, and you're going to look at some really nice games for them come 2026. Utah, I'm trying to read the comments. My microphone's on. We're not tanking this channel. Smash the like. Thank you, DWDCB. I appreciate it. I just don't think you can have a season like this where you're this bad, losing Kelly Olynyk and Ochai Agbaji and Simone Fontecchio, and that's what absolutely corrodes your season. I mean, the other one that's not playing is Jordan Clarkson, and that, as much as we get angry at Jordan Clarkson or whatever with his inefficiency, there is some stabilization there. The tough part is the last 4 or 5 games, Keontae's been in a big time slump, and he's kind of one of our most important players now, and that's been rough, but that's what happens with rookies. There's not a lot of veterans there to stabilize when one of your rookies like Keontae is struggling, or Taylor Hendricks, who, we're seeing incredible flashes, but he's not there yet. He's pretty raw. That was what's interesting about Taylor Hendricks to me, is he was that guy in the draft that everyone was like, oh, this guy is plug and play. And he kind of is if all you care about from him is shooting and defense. But we're kind of realizing that there's a lot of he's very rough around the edges. Those edges are beautiful, and he's going to be a great player, but it's still rough nonetheless. He needs some polish as a player, and that's okay. He's so young, like so young, and he was such a high riser in the draft. Look, he's only 20 years old. He's got, Jalen Green's 2 years older than Taylor Hendricks. Taylor Hendricks needs a few years to figure things out. And I just, I've seen this. I have consulted the bones like they do in Willow. You remember at the beginning of Willow when they talk to the wizard and he consults the bones? And forget the bones, follow the river. That's kind of what the Jazz are doing. They thought the bones were going to lead them to convey. The bird went the other way. And you got to follow the river now. And honestly, we've been talking about this all year. I write about this incessantly, probably is slightly insane. I don't see any other track. And the Jazz keep telling us what they want, and what they want is to win a championship. And that's what Danny Ainge wants to do. Danny Ainge ain't no casual. He is not one that looks at this and goes, oh, well, we just kind of want to get our crown burger and root on players that we like and gotten to know and have a nice little winning record, get blown out by the actual contenders, and we all get to feel good about ourselves and just root on the Jazz next year and win a few more games than we lose, and that's great. Danny Ainge doesn't want that. I don't want that. I would like to win a title. I think as painful as this is, the thing that's more painful to me is going into those playoff series and knowing that it's not going to happen. As good as Utah was with Donovan and Rudy, I still didn't really feel deep down that they were good enough to win the championship. I really didn't, even if they were fully healthy. I mean, they should have beat Denver in that one series with when Mike Conley, and Donovan was on a bum ankle or whatnot, and I can't remember during the pandemic or whatever. But even then it was like, well, do I really think they're going to go all the way? That might have been their shot, to be honest. But even then I was skeptical, and we were right. I mean, it wasn't good enough. KG10 to TH5 DWCB, $2. Thank you, my friend. Danny ain't no dentist. Go Dennis. Go Jazz, tank now. Yeah, I mean, if the goal is to win a championship, it's kind of what you have to do. You have to get that elite guy. It's not that complicated. This is a very straightforward league. And I think the Jazz have two guys on this team that will be on this team in 5 years when they're going for that. And that's Keontae and Taylor Hendricks. And, things change really rapidly. I mean, maybe Walker Kessler, maybe Bryce Sensabaugh, maybe, but who knows? But right now, I think those guys are two core guys for the foreseeable future. And if they develop, and if Keontae and Taylor just decide like, hey, I want to be great, it's really up to them at this point. They've shown all the flashes. They've shown all the potential. Keontae looks like he can be a 25-point per game guy at some time in his career consistently with great passing. And Taylor Hendricks, like we've said, looks like first team all defense potential with great shooting. But it's up to them, This offseason, it's really up to them. Does Keontae go and put up 1,000 shots a day and just, get that thing on point and work on the weak parts of his game? Go get that handle tight, man. Go get in the lab, as they say, and go get that handle just perfect. Get, I don't know. Go get a Rocky montage with barbells on your back. Do something. But get that handle right, because one thing we've seen with Keontae that he can improve on is just the consistency with his shot and the handle, because everything else is looking pretty darn nice. Once he gets those, add some moves to his game that he knows he can just go to, and boom, you've got yourself a special player. Taylor Hendricks, work on that handle, get that jump shot so it's just automatic, and all of a sudden you're going to see some really nice stuff. And then also just work on your body, get a little stronger. Not heavier, just stronger. By the way, Johnny Juzang's a piece for the future, maybe. This is like the Jazz equivalent of like an Isaiah Joe. He's a lights out 3-point shooter. In fact, he improved his 3-point percentage again tonight. So let's just see where Juzang is for the season. And maybe for the end of the year, we won't do quite as big a deep dive because we know the Jazz are trying to lose. But look at that. He's 38% from 3 now. Boom. He's getting an opportunity, and he's doing it. And he got the start tonight, so that was nice. John Collins played solid tonight. Look at that. 25 points, 6 rebounds. I think he has been actually been pretty darn impressive. And honestly, he's not going to win it, but should get some comeback player of the year nods because he has really turned it around from his last season. And, you know, the defense for the Jazz this year has really been their 3-point defense. It's really bad. It's just really bad. The 3-point defense for Utah is really bad. John Collins hasn't been the greatest rim protector, but I certainly don't think he's the biggest problem. Look at this. He played 19 minutes, scored 25 points. He was 2 for 2 from 3 and 7 for 9 from the field. Pretty awesome. We already talked about Key. He's in a big slump right now. It just is what it is. One of the things with these types of losses is you just got to appreciate the games when they do play well, and he'll get back. I think he'll, let him get some just more time and more experience, and we will see him get back to knocking down threes and playing better. But he's in a slump right now. It's been the last 3, 4, 5 games, but it'll get better. I'm not worried about it. Colin Sexton has been playing really solid for Utah. 8 assists, 7 for 17 from the field tonight, 20 points. I mean, he's just been really solid for Utah. It'll be interesting to see what happens this offseason with him. Utah has 3 picks in this draft. Doggone it. Stupid Wizards won twice. Those idiots. But anyways, we shall see what happens. Man, it's annoying. But anyways, Utah will get 3 picks. The second best second round pick and a late first plus whatever pick they get in this, which is currently number 9, unless they win the lottery, which would be pretty cool. I don't know. In my head, I'm like, if they win the lottery, does that hurt their odds to win the lottery next year? But that's not real. It's all ping pong balls. If you roll a dice and you get a 6 3 times in a row, then you roll a dice and you get a 6 3 times in a row. That's just how it goes. The NBA is just Dungeons and Dragons, okay? No. Although, I'll be honest, there's a little bit of truth to that. Because you know what happened with the San Antonio Spurs? They decided they were going all in with their D20, and they just put all their spells and everything on one roll so that they'd have a really high shot, and they rolled it, and they hit a critical hit. They rolled a 20, and they got Wembanyama. In like 4 or 5 years, they might win a championship if they get enough talent around him. He's that good. So sometimes it's honestly a roll of the dice. Cleveland went number 1 overall, got LeBron James. The San Antonio Spurs got Tim Duncan, number 1 overall. Sometimes it's just rolling that dice. And it's as simple as that. You get that guy when they are there, and that's what happens. So, anyway, not a lot else to say. I really think that Bryce Sensabaugh needs to work on his handles. When he gets in traffic a little bit, it's pretty rough. Tonight, could not hit a 3. He did hit 2, so it was nice to see, but he's in a slump as well. We saw a lot of Kyra Lewis tonight. 4 for 9 from the field and so on. 5 rebounds, 4 assists. I don't know if he's an NBA player, to be honest, but good for him to get some minutes. No Jason Preston. I kind of wouldn't mind seeing him a little more because I think he has a chance to be pretty darn nice. So that's it. Let's see. I have a new thumbnail, by the way, on the YouTube channel. I'm pretty excited about it. It's for the live. I'm going to do more produced stuff. I know I say this all the time, but it's actually going to happen because I have the tools now. What am I looking for here? All right, let's pull this over here. And let's see. Let's pull up the music and then all right, let's go to here and let's see if the draft was today, what would happen? All right. Let's see here, guys. All right, the Jazz still sit solidly at 9. They're now 2.5 games up on Atlanta in the lottery odds. Pretty good for them. So let's see what happens. Utah stays at 9. The updated mock 6 days ago gives them Jacoby Walter or Stefan Castle. I hope they pick Castle just because of the physical traits. I really like him. I know a lot of other people really like him. It's just the shooting. Can he get his shot? Because it's his swing skill, and if he can shoot the ball, holy smokes, can he do everything else? In fact, I haven't watched UConn, so maybe I'll watch some UConn highlights from the tournament. Go watch some UConn. Check out some Stefan Castle. Pretty nice to see him doing so well. But Utah has a chance at Jacoby Walter or Stefan Castle. That's pretty nice. I don't know if Reed Shepard and Rob Dillingham are going that high. Tulane told us there's no way Utah, he just doesn't see it. I don't think so either. Utah needs size. They need size. And I agree. All right, let's give a shout out to our All-Stars tonight. Oh, man, I didn't pull it up. All right, here we go. Let's give a shout out to Ryan Perry, the legend. Tim, the Tim Protector Roebuck. Nathan Butnett Burkhart. Dirty Jazz Car Wash Channel, Fly Eagles Fly Platinum Eagles, The Real Deal Lars Jarvin and Just Buckets JB, Baby Elliott Matson, Christian House Money to Haas, The Outlaw Jesse James Nelson, Ezekiel Recibe, The Man from Down Under, See Ya, Alexa Later, Built Ford Tough, Alexander Tufts, Jorge Arrizaga Mi Amigo de Abajo, Jordan the Goat Best Roll, TGD Total Game Domination, Tyson Price, The Price is Right, Austin R. Grant Editor Extraordinaire, KG10 to TH5, DW to CB, Darren Williams to Carlos Boozer, Patrick Akubo, The Connoisseur, and Robert Hall of Fame. Guys, if you're a Jazz fan and you haven't liked and subscribed already, what are you doing? Like and subscribe to the Hoops Nerd channel. In fact, let's bring me back up here to end the show. I got to do this. I got to do better at this. What am I doing? There we go. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're a Jazz fan, do it. And go to Prize Picks, use promo code HoopsNerd. I would appreciate it. Guys, I will talk to you next time.